Hello, Infinity! After completing Inktober last month and seeing everybody else complete their monthly challenges, there was a main thought rattling around in my brain. A project I've been ignoring. Something I knew I simply had to do at some point. Y'all, my poor OCs don't have reference sheets. Well, not official ones anyways. Which is one of the main reasons why I did Inktober instead of Oc-tober. But that changes today. It's time to give my OCs the proper TLC they deserve. Great. Now, how do I do that? Therein lies the issue, because there is no one set way of making a reference sheet. It has to be tailored to the project itself, which is an issue because I only have a general idea of the stories I want to tell, but I'm unsure of how I want to tell them. Will it be animation, 2D, 3D, webcomic? What all needs to be included? Do I need a fully rendered turnaround, or do the sticky notes I doodle on at work count? Technically, yes and no. At its core, a reference sheet is just a visual aid to compile and display a character's design. So by that definition, every time I've drawn concept art of my OCs, I was making reference sheets, just unintentionally, which means they aren't going to be as useful as they could be. I've only made one proper reference sheet before, and it was for my persona. And if I'm being honest with myself, it was not the greatest, but I didn't need it to be perfect, because I plan to eventually make my persona in 3D, which is an incredibly intimidating endeavor, but I just had to start somewhere. So I just got to start this project too. And start I did. The little lady I have up on my screen now is Echoette. Some of the folks over on Cara may have heard about her already. She is one half of the supernatural buddy cop duo in a webcomic I've been prepping. The Offices of Liminal and Associated Spaces. The title is a bit of a work in progress. Without revealing too much, my dear Echoette takes on a mentor-type role throughout the story, having been in the service since she was first indoctrinated into the supernatural side of their world over 20 years ago. How has she survived that long, protecting the world from powers beyond mortal comprehension? She's not even sure. As for personality, she very much lives in the moment, which leads her to take most things at face value. Some could call her jaded, others who know her may say she's an airhead, but really, she's just a competent exorcist with the sole focus on the mission to make the world a safer place. Keeping her characterization in mind while working on the first round of references, I knew that her outfits were going to change throughout the series, so when drawing her full body, I focused more on proportions and overall vibes. I was trying to capture cool grandma, you know, the kind of woman that will give profound life advice while riding off on a motorcycle, then the next day not be able to find a pair of glasses sitting on her head. That was the vibe I had in mind for Echoette. I also needed a lot of circles. I wanted to practice drawing her head at different angles with different expressions. Since it's my hope to have her story as a comic, there will be more focus on her face and upper body to enhance character interaction. It also helped me understand her as a character more by imagining her in certain scenarios and what she does involuntarily in response. Does she tilt her head when confused? Does her nose crinkle more when she's upset? Do her eyes ever open past halfway? What is she hiding under her fringe? Backstory stuff, by the way. That comes with some slight gore warning. It's cartoon gore, but not overly graphic. But just a fair warning, her eye is missing. Kind of. Visually, where the missing eye is supposed to be, will be a swirling magical abyss. This magic, and subsequently the stories behind the missing eye, is how Echo can perceive the supernatural side of the world with clarity. A little backstory and concept behind the supernatural aspect of the world. Technically, anyone can experience the other side, but they have to be directly affected by it to get a clear view. Otherwise, it comes across as just that thing out of the corner of your eye, or your subconscious just corrects it to be something based in logic. That's how the story gets its name. It's based on the concept of liminal spaces, a place that evokes a feeling of not meant for human perception. Some common examples are empty public areas like abandoned malls, or psychological transitions like the time between switching one job to another. Concepts that give general unease, like you're not supposed to be experiencing it. Which is why most people just subconsciously ignore it. Alrighty, that's enough existentialism. Back to the reference sheets. After some quality practice in, it was time for some general color palettes. Even though Echo's clothes were going to change on a regular basis, she would still stick to similar color families, as her aesthetic demands. But it is good to have a general sense of color schemes for your characters for a few reasons. Making sure your characters are more easily identifiable, for one thing. A consistent color palette can make it easier for your audience to pick out your character against other works and against your own work. You can use your reference palettes when determining your backgrounds to avoid your subjects fading in their environment, but also so they don't clash with it. Other characters with cohesive color palettes feel more grounded in the universe and pair well with the other cast. So many more reasons why this is a reference sheet video and not a color theory video. I'm not 100% with my color theory as of yet, so I'm still learning the vast knowledge of how to make cohesive palettes. Back to Echo. Fun fact about her hair color, the first time I ever drew her, I was using my acrylic marker set, which is quite limited in its color selection. Originally, Echoette was going to have pink hair, but I was worried she was going to look too similar to my other OC, Nanik, from a different story. So I switched over to the teal, which eventually led me to age up Echo in the story. Funny how that worked out. One final thing I wanted to make sure I had represented in Echo's reference sheets were her hand wraps. She's not prone to violence, but sometimes a gal just has to punch a ghost in the face. The wraps have runes, mystic symbols, and general script embroidered in, done by one of the witches on staff. They may not be effective against all the supernatural beings that they might have to fight in the story, but they certainly pack a punch. With that, I have a good start on my first reference sheet. Obviously, as my projects develop more, I'll probably end up with more of a reference folder, but the task feels less daunting now that it's started. Okay, so who's next? Ah, yes. My baby Apir. I have to complete the duo. Apir is an early 20-something who has been a pencil pusher since they joined the office, but after the incident, they were immediately put into hunter training for their own protection and the protection of others. Luckily, Echo volunteered to take Apir under her wing. I very much feel like their dynamic is that Echo would continuously call Apir kiddo or buddy, and Apir would just deadpan back like they're old enough to drink and fight horrors beyond mortal comprehension on a regular basis. Please don't talk down to them. Their dynamic is a very muted down version of one of my favorite trope pairings. Someone who takes everything too seriously and someone who doesn't take anything seriously at all. Design definitely reflects that. Whereas Echo tends to bend the definition of what business casual really is, Apir wholeheartedly bought several copies of the same reference outfit described in the employee handbook, and will not be deviating from that until much later in the story, despite Echo's advice and best efforts. They were just barely convinced to wear comfy non-slip shoes. Also, I promise Apir is not stuck up, they're just wound a little tight as a big old ball of anxiety, but they're not actively trying to be a jerk. Apir is just a general rule follower. They just want to clock in and clock out. Everything was straightforward and simple. This paperwork gets filed here, this routine on this day, etc. But then the incident happens, and they're flung into the deep ends of chaos. They know they could seriously hurt someone if they don't solve the mystery of their issue. And the main person they need to rely on is Echo, who is a little out there. I started Apir's sheet the same way. Body shot, facial expressions. It's a good formula, a great jumping off point. I highly recommend if you are kind of stuck on how to make a good reference sheet for your characters, I would recommend this method. Body shot, facial expressions. But I haven't spent as much time working on Apir, so I did a close-up view of their face to make sure I was happy with their design. And then I took a break to work on other characters. Sometimes you just need to sit on a design for a little while. And then I came back, and let me tell you, I could not recreate Apir's face shape for the life of me. Every time I tried to draw them at a new angle, something was off. Which is why this reference sheet is so important. I had a hard time staying on model, as you can see, and the slightest difference, and Apir wouldn't look like themselves. It could be that I'm still working on making more readable designs, and still have to work on my perspectives. But these are my OCs, and they deserve to be accurately represented. So practice I must. After another procrastination break, Listen, you can only force yourself to make things perfect for so long. At some point, you have to separate yourself from a piece to gain perspective. For me, that was going back to scribbles that were practice for line control and playing a weekly session of D&D with the fam. It's not giving up, it's just more brain refreshing. There was the brief thought to scrap their entire design altogether, but I just couldn't. I really liked the design that I had. It gave off the exact vibes I wanted for Apir. I just needed to find a way to get around this hurdle. Alright, okay. Since I was struggling with perspective, I did the daunting task of just filling an entire sheet with perspective studies. Really going back to art school I was trying to break down Apir's face to the fundamentals, narrowing down what I was messing up. I noticed a common issue when doing a third quarter view. I was misaligning the eyes, which was leading me to squash and skew the face in a weird way. Though I did not become a perspective master overnight, taking the time to do this practice did and will continue to help me in my projects down the line. After refreshing my artistic eye and professionally procrastinating for 2 weeks, I sketched up a new reference sheet with new vigor and improved understanding of my fundamentals, and messily slapping in the general colors to make sure I was happy with the balance. And ta-da! Another reference sheet to add to the vault. The final 3 characters I have so far are not nearly as thought out as the main duo, so I'm just going to breeze through them real fast with just the info I have. This handsome devil, named to be determined, will function as the handler who will give the main characters their work assignments. He is second in command to the main boss and is a very whiny kitty. He really only respects the boss lady. Everybody else is just an employee to manage and give him more work to do. He is trash, and I love him. As for the notes I had with his initial concept art, the only note I had was, "This man must billow. If a strong breeze passed him by, he would billow in the wind." I wanted to thread the fine line between sophisticated gentleman and lazy loungeabout, the way most cats often do. People who own cats know what I'm talking about. As for the big boss lady herself, name also to be determined, she really won't be appearing much in the story, at least not in the beginning. So her concept is the least planned out. I just have a general visual concept, and for background and personality, the only thing I have is that she's not intentionally malicious and she cares deeply for her employees. Her company was founded for people to help themselves by helping others. She understands that the world is cruel and unjust, and anybody willing to step up and help is held in high regards with her, which I think would tie into her employees having a pretty high view of her as well. So we'll just see if she gets any major roles. And last, but certainly not least, we have the witch that makes Echo's hand wraps. You didn't think she would just be a nameless background character, did you? Nope, she's Echoette's wife. Yep, the classic they met on the job love story. Pristine works in the Witchcraft Support and Development Department. She is in full support of her wife's mission, but fieldwork was never really for her. Sure, she gets a little nervous when Echoette has to work late or gets assigned a higher grade supernatural, but after many years of partnership, she has faith that Echoette will come back home. As for the mentorship aspect of Apir, Pristine believes that it could be good for both of them, and she absolutely will mother bear if given the chance. As for her reference sheet, you're watching me come up with her design on the spot because I knew that she existed. I just had no idea what I wanted her to look like. But here she is, taking form, and honestly, I absolutely love her design. The mustard little sweater. I thought about maybe doing a skirt, but she's definitely a bell-bottom pants kind of gal. And of course, every good witch needs a big floppy hat. And here is the squad lineup. It was important I had a reference of everyone together to make sure all the designs were balanced and cohesive, double-checking to make sure that they all felt a part of the same universe. It also made for a good height guide. This may or may not be used consistently as the project takes place. Finally, there was just one last thing to do. Using my newly acquired reference sheets, I decided to make a bonus panel of Echoette and Apir's first meeting. I'm not sure if this scene would make it into the actual comic itself, since I plan to start the story directly in the action, probably a few months or a year into their partnership. But I think the panel is cute either way. If you want more OC content, I have one other project I'm noodling around with. This one is more of a sci-fi superhero vibe with a much bigger main cast, which means many more character reference sheets to make. But this video is already getting kind of long, so those OCs will have to wait until next year. But if you do want a part 2, perhaps a subscribe or dropping me a like to let me know. You can also find me across the Webiverse on Cara, Bluesky, and Instagram, all by the same name. Thank you so much for joining me in my little slice of chaos, and I'll see you later.